Good morning, I'm Blackbright and I'm broadcasting out the UK. And as you know, I talk on a variety of subjects, sometimes to do with injustice, sometimes to do with legislation. Sometimes I put my little 2 cents in with regard to relationships. It all depends where my spirit moves. What my spirit tells me to do on a particular day, that is what I do. Now, I've been ignoring the majority of my WhatsApps for about a week, because some of them are just too traumatic and I just can't get into it. And I'm not quite sure how I can add to what is going on. Yes, I need to be knowledgeable, but sometimes, like I say, I'm an empath. I have to be very, very careful what I bring into my energy. Anyway, I have a trusted friend who shares things with me. And I know anytime I click on his video, whatever he sends me is going to be gentle enough for me to watch, but impactful enough for me to share. And this morning was one such morning. So I'm going to share with you a video. I don't need to say much about it, but I will comment on it at the end.
This is a story about one of Britain's bank managers, Dale Semper, a really successful bank manager. His mother Lynette has worked for the NHS for 20 years. His partner of 2 decades, Denise, works in human resources.
Yeah. He said he's too big to get kisses, you know.
And this is the story of how their happy, successful lives have been almost destroyed.
That's the
I'm
car.
accustomed to being pulled over and stuff when I'm driving cars and so on. I'm accustomed to it. I get it. Never liked it, but I understood. Right? But this particular day, when they've come out, it was so many police officers. And they said, we're here to arrest you for firearms. I'm like, firearms? I'm like, really? I said, no, you got the wrong person. I don't get this. I'm on my way to work. I'm a bank manager. I do not get this. And I'm arguing. I'm like, trying to explain myself. I'm like, no, this can't be me.
It was the most traumatic experience ever. Being pulled over, and before you could blink, the handcuffs were on Dale, and he was pulled outside the car, and I was trying to understand what is going on. What did we do? Trying to get a sense from the cops and not understanding what's going on, and basically just being shouted at to stay in the car, be quiet. We're talking to him, having this played out before somebody actually gave me some information. We're arresting him on firearm. I'm just like, okay, I can breathe now because I know what it is, and I know we don't have any firearms, so, let's let this play out.
Police told Dale he was being arrested for possession of a firearm, and they had a warrant to search his home.
So at that time, I'm thinking, you have about 15, 20 people here. What is it that, what could I have actually done to have made something like this happen? Why are they here?
Around the same time, police were breaking into his mother's flat while she worked at the local hospital.
I worked for the NHS 20 years coming July. And to hear that guns going through my flat, are they crazy? And when I came home, I saw my door busted. So there's a padlock on my door. A lot of things were scattered on my house. All of my drawer with my panties, my bras, everything was pulled out, thrown on the floor. I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemy.
Back at Dale's, the police's line of questioning, which he says he was later to learn underpinned the allegations against him, was how could he afford the things in his house? A nice car.
One of the comments the police officer even said when they came in, how did you get to have all these things? I'm like, have all of what? I don't understand. And he's like, it's clear that in one of the statements they've written, they say we're living above our means. I'm like, how can you know we're living above our means? You don't know what I do.
No firearm was found in his house, his partner's, or his mother's. And for the first, but certainly not the last time, the family thought that would be the end of it. But during the search, police found just under £2,000 in Dale's safe. Initially, the arrest was for firearms possession. Now, it was for money laundering.
how is it possible from firearm to money laundering? Something is not quite right. And from the onset, the undertone to this whole investigation was, look at us, we are black people. This is the reason why this is continuing, and there is no end to this. We both go to work, we both put in our 9 to 5, we make sure we do that. You know, we didn't come from much, but we're making sure that together we're on the same page, we're doing it for ourselves, and, you know, we don't ask for anything. We're out there fighting for it.
Dale was suspended from his job at the bank. Police obtained a financial restraint order freezing all his assets. Dale, who owns a number of buy-to-let properties and with his partner shares a 6-figure income, says he couldn't even get £1 out of the cash point. Terrified, the couple replaced their legal aid solicitor with a private lawyer for several weeks, focusing on justifying all of Dale's financial dealings.
The information he provided was, I have an explanation. I've explained my assets, my finances. He produced, within 24 hours, a file because they said his watch, his jewellery, his possessions were all tainted items. So under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002, they made the assertion that everything was part of the proceeds of crime. They have used shoestring or false intelligence that there's a young black man with no previous convictions driving a brand new X6, enjoying life, and then the next day he's the enemy of the state, where his assets, his finances are paralysed, his mental health compromised. His whole life is literally being watched.
7 weeks after it was put in place, the financial restraint order against him was dropped, as there was no lawful grounds for it to remain in place. He was awarded £10,000 in costs by the Crown Prosecution Service. Once again, Dale assumed this meant the case against him would be dropped. Once again, he was wrong. After months of asking, the Met Police finally provided the original warrant and details of the information they used to get it.
It actually said that I was involved in a sham marriage, money laundering, thinking what? I go by 4 different aliases, different names. I'm thinking, okay, what? I'm into drugs, and drugs, human trafficking, and the worst one was terrorism. I'm like,
Alongside this litany of enormous allegations, they also had to tackle a series of basic errors in the police information about Dale, a British passport holder born in Montserrat.
There is this element of being from Jamaica, which he isn't from Jamaica. I am Jamaican. I'm proud of being Jamaican. He has no links to Jamaica apart from me, but he's now it's part of what they're investigating. First, he's in the UK illegally. That's something that could have been quashed very easily. You know, he's got ties to trafficking. Trafficking, come on. It's like they've packed the case so highly for us to defend ourselves that it's gonna overflow, and the overflow is for him to end up in prison.
Still suspended from work for months and months, he was left in limbo.
One time he called me, he was going to the gym, and he called me, he said, Mommy, I'm at the park, and I was going to work. And he called me and he was crying, and he said, Mommy, I'm going crazy. Why are they doing this to me? You could imagine hearing that from your child. Oh dear, it's a nightmare I can't wake up from.
How dark was it for you?
it was really, really bad. It got to the point where sometimes I felt like I didn't even want to be around. And she's like, don't hurt yourself. Promise me you won't hurt yourself. Me and my mother, we went through so much, and I never wanted her to have looked back at me and say, this is what my son has amounted to. It was such shame. It was a shame.
18 months after he was first arrested, he's arrested again at 20 to 7 in the evening on suspicion of possession of firearms. None are found. At 7:15, just 35 minutes later, he is de-arrested. People will say there's no smoke without fire. It's entirely possible that the Met Police would say, we had credible intelligence that justified this investigation.
This started off with false intelligence. A man of no previous convictions, no bad character, not touching a firearm in his life, an explanation of every penny he's ever earned in his life, from pay slips to tax returns to cash. The question I'd be asking myself as looking at this case would be, to go this far, surely, with all the costs, God knows how much the financial investigation and the CPS spent on this very good 26-month case in the public purse, as well as my client defending himself privately, you'd think that there was something. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing.
Dale's lawyer says from the beginning police obtained warrants based on a wholly inaccurate portrayal of Dale's character, and that if he'd been a white bank manager, this would never have happened. On the 11th of October, the Met Police tell Dale's lawyer no further action will be taken in the case. There was no apology.
I've become the best bank manager for years, for quite a few years. It's something of memories of my past and what I've achieved. But the person I was before now, I feel like that person is now gone. Like I said, I feel like something has been taken away from me, and I feel like I can never get that back. When someone rings my doorbell or even knocks on my door, automatically I think someone is there to get me. If I'm driving and I see a police siren coming up, even if it's an ambulance, I'm thinking someone is trying to get me. Constantly. I just can't get it out of my head.
Dale is back at work, though at a lower grade. His hopes of becoming a director in the bank all gone. It's already cost him around £140,000 in legal costs. He's very conscious of others in a similar situation who couldn't afford to defend themselves. He now intends to sue the Met for damages. The family hope for an apology.
So it's just really hard to kind of think, okay, the investigation's over, so okay, we can now breathe. I don't think we will ever be able to breathe.
It means so much to me that people that's around me, they would know that I was innocent. I just feel that if you're good people and you're doing things correctly, in the end, you will prevail. It will happen. It has to happen.
Oh, I found that really traumatic. It's interesting that they use the word "I can't breathe" because, there's different ways where you can't breathe. In the sense that we have the way in George Foreman, he couldn't breathe, he couldn't literally breathe. But what they mean is that they cannot stop for 1 minute and think, yeah, I'm going to be okay now. They're forever walking on eggshells. Now, when you think about the litany of conviction, now this was a black man, no previous convictions, but his car was too nice for a black man. Black people are not meant to have nice things. And if they do, they've got it through criminal means. That is the mindset. And when we're talking about racism, it's a perception of black people. It's not real. And that is what a lot of people are fighting against. And I had to show you that as an example of racism. They were so hell-bent on punishing that man for being in a position where he could actually afford things that a lot of people would want. I mean, white people, black people, it doesn't really matter. He was living the right life of Riley, a brand new X6. You know what I mean? He's 6 buy-to-let homes. And despite all of that, and he was able, of course, having that kind of income and having those kind of homes, he would have had an accountant. And so everything would have been recorded. But I don't think they expected a black man to have their papers in order. And, I'm constantly telling people, when they say, I can't find this, I can't find that. I'm, constantly telling people you need to have things organized. I mean, now we have like laptops, we have electronic means. I mean, it's better, it's much easier. People say, I don't have a scanner. Take a photograph of it. Make sure you keep records, because like in the situation where that gentleman was driving totally innocent, he's still going to have a criminal record. 26 months it took for them to drop that case. 26 months. They couldn't keep his job open as a bank manager. They can't have somebody who's got a tainted past who is a bank manager. So he got demoted. He's lucky he got his job back. But like he says, it will never, ever be the same. He will never be able to enjoy the fruits of his labour. And the same for his wife. And it is such a shame because these are things that you cannot get out of your mind. And like I said, you know, when the police knocked on my door the other day for my neighbour, and my neighbour's white, but when they knocked on the door for my neighbour, I felt nervous. Why? Because I know you don't have to be guilty for the police to find something on you. You don't have to be guilty. That's why I try to cross all my T's and dot all my I's. I don't have much and I don't do much, but what little I do, I make sure I do, now I'm doing this YouTube. I mean, sometimes I don't even get any money. Most of the times I don't get any money from YouTube. Number one, I think, my subscribers are messed around with, my views are messed around with. On top of that, that my videos are deemed controversial. But even then, if I get £100, I make sure I have an accountant because just in case something goes wrong, just in case they decide to say, oh, she's up to no good, she's doing something. So therefore, we better make sure that I better make sure that I'm doing okay. And that doesn't protect me. That doesn't protect me. I mean, if they want to plant something, they're going to plant something. And for somebody, like they said, if he didn't have 140,000 to pay a lawyer, he could be in jail if he couldn't prove it. And that's the sad thing about all of this. A lot of men are in jail because they can't afford a lawyer. And, that is the sad, sad thing about all of this. You can't trust the justice system because the justice system do not believe that police officers are corrupt because they're on the same side. So they have to defend their police officers. They're not going to think, oh, these police officers have made it all up. They're going to think, oh, there has to be some truth in it. Okay, he might not be using different names, but he probably did marry her under a sham marriage to get his stay. Okay, he didn't marry her under a sham marriage. Okay, so he's probably fiddling drugs. Okay, he's not fiddling drugs, so maybe he has done some money laundering. He hasn't done some money laundering, so maybe he's involved in terrorism and human trafficking. There has to be something out of this whole litany of accusations where he is guilty. And so they make the assumption that somewhere without of all of this, he is guilty. And when you see any successful black man in particular is eventually brought down. Even if they're innocent, they have to pay through their teeth to prove that they're innocent. Unfortunately, those people who are successful may have the money to do it, but all of that money is gone. And I pray that that man is successful in suing the police because his life is ruined. Yes, he can go back to work. He's got a job, but will he ever feel the same? Will he ever have that air of confidence? And I remember my mother always used to say, Myrna, don't draw attention to yourself. And I never understood why. I thought it was because, I was quite an extrovert in appearance. I'm not an extrovert as a person. I'm quite an extrovert in the way I dress and change up and things. So I thought it was because of that. But sometimes our parents have an inner knowledge. When they're saying don't draw attention to yourself, they know the dangers. They know the dangers of what's out there. So that's why you're forced to keep a low profile. You can't flaunt, even if your money is legal. That video shows that you can't flaunt your hard work. You still have to play it low. You still have to keep under the radar. Because if he had been driving around in a little Honda or, I don't even know if Hondas exist, but yeah, if he'd been driving around in a Honda or something less prominent, he wouldn't have drawn attention to himself. But when they see a black man or even an Asian man driving a nice car, they automatically think it's linked to drugs. That's automatic. They cannot believe that somebody has worked to get that amount of money. And the thing is, with those kind of cars, you need to have a hell of a lot, even if you were going to get it on hire purchase or on a loan agreement. So they cannot in their minds imagine that a hardworking man, because they don't expect a hardworking man to be a bank manager. They got this perception that they'll be warehouse people, or they might be mechanics, or they might be in construction. They don't expect them to be a bank manager. And they don't expect them to use their money wisely and invest in property. That's not the way they think black people work. Black people flaunt their money. Black people spend their money. Black people are frivolous. So no, a black man cannot afford. A black man isn't organised enough to get their finances in order and think strategically in order to settle down to live a life of luxury. That is not how it works. That's not how it's meant to work. And when it does work like that, you stand out like a sore thumb. And that is what happened. 15 police officers stopped his car when he was on the way to work. So they'd been watching him. And if they'd been watching him, they would know what he was doing. So it doesn't even make sense. Because if they were watching him, they would see that he's going to work and coming home. So it wasn't about that. Because normally when investigators watch people, especially if you've watched any of those programs where they're trying to catch out people who are defrauding the DWP, those people who are taking benefits and yet they have a house or they have some money income. They watch them for months. So it doesn't make sense that you have been watching Dale for months if these are the allegations and you cannot see his lifestyle. No, it's deeper than that. They knew what he was doing, but they punished him. They needed to punish him for being successful. They needed to punish him for living a lifestyle that was better than theirs. He is not supposed to be able to do that. And I think it's such a shame. So did I want to make, the innuendo is know your place as black people. Know your place. Don't get above your station, because that is what they implied. You're getting above your station. That perception that all black people are criminals. If you're living a certain lifestyle, you've acquired that through some criminal means, criminal activities. The assumption that he was Jamaican and that because he's Jamaican, he's had to do drugs to get that money. That's, you see, the perception. I mean, these people think everybody's bloody Jamaican. And I said that in a previous video. And then because they believe that someone is Jamaican, they automatically, like they thought he was, an illegal immigrant. This is the perception of Jamaicans, especially younger Jamaicans, not so much the Commonwealth Jamaicans, but the younger Jamaicans. Number one, they're in the country illegally. Number two, they're doing drugs. Number three, they have firearms, like they thought he had firearms. That's why 16 police officers. He's lucky they didn't bloody shoot him. If that was America, he might be dead. He might not have even been able to tell his story. But that's what I'm saying with the American police and the English police. That is the difference. American police, it's a quick death. English police is a slow death. And when I say a slow death, usually it's metaphorically speaking. So because they thought he was Jamaican, these are the assumptions that they made about his character. And his woman is Jamaican, a hardworking Jamaican young woman. The only reason why some Jamaicans in this country hustle, so to speak, is because they can't do anything legally. All their legal avenues have been closed. That's the only reason. And the thing is that when that happens, that's what the police are depending on. They close all the doors, all the way, all the routes to survival. And then they say, yeah, we've got you now. There's no way you can work. You can't rent. You have to depend on someone. So therefore, we have got you. So when we stop you, we know we're going to find something. But they picked on the wrong one this time. But even then, his life has been ruined. He will never be able to walk with his head up because it's traumatized him. Absolutely traumatized him. I mean, at one point he even thought about committing suicide, and that is how bad it got to him. He didn't want to admit to those words, but he did think about committing suicide. And if he had, they would have said, oh, it's because he was guilty. So he stood up and fought against it, and he did it in a legal way that cost him an arm and a leg. And I am sure that with the right solicitors, that solicitor seemed a bit tame to me, but he might be stronger in reality. But he needs a serious solicitor who's going to take on that case. Because, you know, just like those people who die from violence at police hands, and they get, the family gets money. So the family gets money, but the victim is dead. But even if that victim was alive, the trauma of that experience never leaves you. It's like people who go in the army and they see their friends shot and they see something bad happen. Yes, you can get on with your life, but the trauma doesn't leave you. And that's why they call it post-traumatic stress, because even after the event, you keep remembering. Every time he gets into his car, he probably won't ever buy an X6 again. He'll probably buy a more moderate car. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But if he's traumatized, he'll probably buy a low-profile car, which means he cannot feel as confident. He cannot feel as aspirational. When he's at work, he won't be able to have that light shining out of him. It'll always be dimmed. And it will show through his eyes, the pain in his eyes. And it will show in his speech. And, you know, it's so sad. Supposing his mother had a weak heart, it could have killed his mother. You know, but she looks like a strong woman. So, yeah, the presumption, like I say, a lot of time people presume that when the police stop a black man, he must have done something wrong. As you can see from that, he hadn't done anything wrong. Nothing at all. So you need to take the assumption out and know that there are police officers out there who are out to get black people who they believe, well, for whatever reason, if they've got that mindset, if they don't get them because they're guilty, they'll still get them because they're innocent. And then they have to pay through the teeth to prove that they're innocent. And a lot of them can't do them. So they get you left, right and centre. It's really, really, really sad. And once you've had a brush with the law, for him, he'll be forever walking on eggshells. Like he says, when he hears a police siren, he will forever associate it with his past. And that's the trigger. And he definitely needs some form of counselling to de-trigger and to move that trigger to something else. But I don't think until he's been compensated, like he said, it's important for his family to know he's innocent. But, you know, when all eyes on you, it's so difficult. And people say, oh, you know, how are you? What have you been doing over the last few years? Somebody you haven't seen for a long time. And that is what comes. And having to repeat it sometimes. Sometimes you'll find that you have to justify. You have to justify it. I remember, you know, I was counselling someone and she had been accused wrongfully of stealing from a very large organisation, and it traumatised her. And I remember she was trying to justify her innocence, and I remember thinking, you don't have to justify your innocence to me, but that's what happens. In the eyes of them, they feel as though they've got to justify. For them, being innocent is not enough. And every time they meet someone, they're going to have to justify. And I used to say to her, you don't have to tell people your business. Nobody knows. But it was her way of trying to get back her good character. And it's like that gentleman, he'll be forever trying to get back his good character and re-establish himself in society as a decent human being. 140,000K. They gave him 10,000. The CPS gave him 10,000 grand. What is that going to do? They should have paid off his legal fees. I wonder if they did. I wonder if a 10,000 compensation meant that they paid off his legal fees. I certainly hope so. But yeah. So just so you know, you don't have to feel guilty. All you need to do is buck up on a police officer who's had a bad day. And his bad day is your bad day. And that's all for now. Bye-bye.